Let's look at one more example. It says here students won't have any A's if they play a lot of Xbox. Here's if, so we can find the independent variable. Playing a lot of Xbox. If we flip it, let's flip it. If students play a lot of Xbox, then they won't have any A's. There's if and there's then. So you'll always be able to find the independent and dependent variable. Students will be aggressive if they listen to a lot of rock music. Let's flip it. You just start with if. The independent variable is right here, and the dependent variable is right there. If students listen to a lot of rock music, then they will be aggressive. Okay. So, once again, there's the independent variable, and the dependent variable follows then. On the test, I'm going to ask you, hey, which word do you think needs an operational definition? Now, what does that mean? A precise way to measure a variable. An operational definition is just a word that is way too vague, meaning it needs more of a definition. If someone was going to do this experiment in Austin and San Antonio, they better make sure they're exactly right. What do they mean by the words? So, for example, let's look at this sentence. If students... Okay, what do you mean by students? Do you mean junior high? Or do you mean high school? Are you talking about only freshmen? Or only juniors? Or both junior high and high school? So for students, we'll say only high schoolers, okay? That way the guys in San Antonio and the guys in Austin will be on the same page. If students listen to a lot. Well, what do you mean by a lot? More than 4 hours? More than 3 hours? More than 20 minutes? For a lot, we'll say more than 2 hours a day. So if I ask you on the test which word needs an operational definition, I'm just saying which word looks like it's just way too generic. Rock music. What do you mean by rock music? Are you talking about old rock music or everything from 1970 to the year 2020? What are you referring to? So for rock music, we're going to say anything from 2000 on up, like bands like Korn and Disturbed. We're not talking about older bands. Then they will be aggressive. What do you mean by aggressive? They hit people? They yell at people? What do you mean? Do they just look aggressive? What do you mean by aggressive? So for aggressive, we're going to measure it by saying, well, are they getting referrals? We're going to count every time they get a referral. We're going to say, well, that's being aggressive. There you go. They're defying authority. So if I ask you on the test, which word needs an operational definition, I'm just saying, which word is way too vague? Like these right here. Continuing with sociological research, number 3, you do the research. Number 4, you get the results. And then number 5, you get the conclusions, you prove or disprove your hunch and your hypothesis. And there you have the scientific method. Now, if you are going to do research, how do you do research? How are you going to get this information? Well, you could do an experiment. That's where you create an artificial environment. You create a scenario where you're in control and you can test people's behavior and see how they're going to react. The strength, you're in control over the setting. You're in control of how many people are participating in the experiment. Is the experiment done at night, in the day? Is it mostly men? Is it mostly women? Is it mostly old? Is it mostly young? Now, you don't have to know the weakness. I want you to know the strength. The weakness is that people can act differently when they're being watched, and that is true. That's why this show right here, hey, what would you do? I'm sure maybe some of you have seen it. No one knows that they're being recorded. So this is an experiment where people are just naturally acting out in the world. They come up with a social experiment, and then we find out, what do people do? What would you do? Interesting. Another way of doing research is that you could start participating with a group of people you're trying to find out about their behaviors and looking for patterns of behavior. Now, participant observation started years ago. These are, it says here, Fiji. What happened is the missionaries would go to these remote areas like Fiji, and they would write down in a little tiny book, and they would write everything that they would see. And then sociologists said, well, we should just do the same thing. We need to write down everything that we see, and we'll look for patterns. The strength, you see things in the natural setting, and it's in depth. You're participating, you're doing, you're seeing. The weakness is it takes a long time and it's expensive. You can't just hang out with a person or a group of people for 1 week or even 1 month and that's it, you know everything. No, it doesn't really work that way. You gotta hang out with them for a long period of time to gain their trust. So it won't just be 2 months or 3 months. It's gotta be at least a minimum. I would say a minimum of at least 3 to 4 months. But it should be longer than that. This is me, and I was an intern, and I was doing participant observation at a probation office, and I wanted to see, well, what's it like to be a probation officer? Would I like the job? Could I do it? Sometimes sociologists hang out or do things that are borderline on, controversial, maybe even sometimes illegal. Maybe some sociologists could hang out with motorcycle clubs or Texas Rangers. What does a Texas Ranger do? We all know what a police officer does. What exactly is a Texas Ranger? Here we have a sign, and it's for people that are trying to cross over illegally. Maybe a sociologist would want to do participant observation with coyotes, people who cross over people illegally, to find out how dangerous, how much do they get paid, what is a typical week, a typical month, a typical year like for a coyote. So sometimes they can do things that are borderline dangerous. Maybe you'd want to do participant observation with people who do fireworks at shows. That would be an interesting job. And you would hang out and you'd learn about all the things about pyrotechnics. So participant observation, another way that sociologists learn about the world around them. Then we have a survey. Now, a survey is simply a questionnaire, and we've all done surveys, and we've all been sitting and someone hands you a survey or people ask you to do a survey. So we already kind of know the strengths and the weaknesses of a survey. The strength is it's very inexpensive. We could create a survey in one afternoon, come up with 10 questions. A survey could be, would high schools like to have Chick-fil-A every Friday? Or, what would be better on Friday? Would students rather have Chick-fil-A or Taco Bell? It's very fast. You could probably do about 100 people in one day if you wanted to, probably even 200 people. And it's private. It's very anonymous. They don't have to put their name. These are the strengths of a survey. Of course, we all know the weakness of a survey. Maybe some people won't do it, or they'll put fake answers, or maybe they'll just put what you want to hear. If somebody's wearing a shirt that says "Save the Turtles," and you're doing a survey and it says, what animal do you think should be saved? Maybe you'll just put "Save the Turtles," because that's the shirt that they're wearing, and you know that's who they work for.